Hi, and welcome to another episode of Vision to Venture. Today I'm joined with Daniel Lenton, the founder and CEO of Unify. Unify aims to unify all machine learning frameworks, making ML code cleaner, more flexible, and fully reusable. Hi, Daniel. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, yeah, great to be here.
Great to have you. So, Daniel, what inspired you to start Unify and pursue the mission of unifying machine learning frameworks?
Oh, good question. So initially, this actually started during my PhD. Going back a little bit more, I originally did mechanical engineering at Imperial College. Realized quite quickly that I'm not as into planes and engines and everything as much as I thought, and spent my summers doing kind of low-level microcontroller programming for robotics and stuff. Then, thankfully, off the back of those kind of projects, I was able to leapfrog into a computer science PhD. And it was during that PhD that I first came up against the framework fragmentation problem, basically. So in 2016, when I started, there was some people still using this C++ library called Caffe. Really good, really fast, not very easy to debug and prototype in. And then basically over the course of the next few years, we had people intern at OpenAI, DeepMind, Meta, Google more broadly. I interned at Amazon on their drone program. And what happened is everybody would come back then with a different framework that they were using. We had some people using TensorFlow, others using PyTorch. There was then JAX, MXNet, which I used at Amazon, and various others. And this then just made it very hard for people to collaborate in the lab. And I found this really annoying and wanted to do something about it, basically. So initially, Ivy was a functional abstraction layer that basically enabled the creation of framework-agnostic code that then people could write and share with others in the lab. And that worked well. But basically, as time went on, I fell in love with this deep infrastructure problem more than the research, I suppose. Went deep down this engineering rabbit hole and haven't looked back since, really. And then actually Ivy has expanded out, and it's no longer just a framework to create new code in that can be used with any other framework. It's now also a code converter that can take any pre-existing project, whether it be 10 years old or current or even future. When you look at our roadmap, you'll be able to take this project and with one line of code, bring it into this unified representation such that it can be mixed and matched with others and deployed efficiently. So basically the motivation was kind of internal. It was me as a researcher struggling to do things productively and deciding that I want to dive into the infrastructure, basically.
Brilliant. So it seems like there's quite a few benefits to Unify, but what are the main benefits?
Yeah, so I try not to dilute the message too much because I think that the reality is there's a lot of different ways that this can be used. There's even some ways that people come to us and say, actually, I could use it for this, and we hadn't even thought about it. So it seems as though we're building something that's somewhat fundamental and potentially transformative. I think the two main ones are, first of all, just making your code run faster. So PyTorch is an amazing framework which is very extensible, very easy to prototype and build new things quickly. Not so great at deployment. It's not particularly runtime efficient. So if you deploy in the cloud on PyTorch, you're going to spend more money than you need to be. So what Ivy can do first and foremost is take your PyTorch code and make it faster. In fact, our product launch in a few weeks is going to center around this, just showing lots of models running more quickly, all with one line of code. So that's one. Again, like by faster, of course, that means lots of things to different people. It means, cheaper first and foremost when you deploy it on the server, and it means lower latency and so on. These are the kind of things it means at the end. That's the first thing. The second thing is then, let's say, training time flexibility. So if you're fine-tuning or building your model and you want to try new ideas quickly during your training process and your kind of MLOps exploration phase, at the moment you can only use the pre-existing tools that work with your version of your framework. With Ivy, this is no longer a limitation. You can take any code out there in the open source, Wild West. It can be from JAX, coming from DeepMind. It can be from Paddle and Mindspore, coming from some top Chinese universities, for example. It can be, in TensorFlow, and you can then bring it into your PyTorch project and try things out instantly. So I think so making things faster and therefore cheaper is one, and then making things way more flexible at training time to do speed of thought, iteration, and experimentation is number two, I would say.
Brilliant. So what were the biggest obstacles or setbacks that you faced in building Unify, and how did you overcome them?
Good question. Technically speaking, which is where I have a tendency to go, I can quickly just touch on two complex technical points. The first of which is that these frameworks are all very different design-wise. PyTorch is not compiled into a graph. It is basically run on the fly, much like Python is with the interpreter, and the stuff you're doing is therefore just asynchronously scheduled to the device. But to get things really efficient, you need things in a graph, because then you can do graph-based analysis and lowering and kind of operator fusion and all these things that really make things run fast. So being able to extract a graph representation from PyTorch is very technically challenging. It's something that's probably the hardest thing that we've worked on and got working well. The other thing would be in a similar direction. Sorry, it's a bit technical again, but in a similar direction, because Ivy is a wrapper framework, this means that it wraps other frameworks when you're using it to train things. But basically, in order to get that running quickly, it's very hard, because if our function wraps other functions in another framework, it's just another layer for the interpreter to step through, which adds runtime overhead, and getting rid of that wrapping inefficiency is a challenge. And we've managed to do so using Python and some clever compilation. But these are two technical challenges, but maybe just for the less technical listener as well, like, I think one of them is just like getting started, because it's such a huge engineering challenge, and I think we've really benefited from getting some early venture funding that then enabled us to get more team members and actually get it taken off. So for the first year, when it was just me as a sole developer trying to build this like monumentally big, not monumental, but just like a huge engineering challenge for it to work, it's just so much work, and trying to do that as an independent person at the beginning was quite daunting. But then thankfully, obviously, people believed in it. We got some funding. I could then hire some interns, and then things have started to accelerate. So I guess kind of getting started and getting people to believe in it potentially having value was definitely a challenge, but one that I'm happy to have at least so far overcome. Yeah.
Great. And run me through the funding process. So I think you mentioned that you had some early venture funding, right? So how did you go about getting that?
Yeah, so basically what has happened is I actually was building just purely in building mode, and a lot of VCs started to reach out to me on LinkedIn in kind of late 2021. To be honest, I didn't know what VC stood for at that time. Didn't know what YC was, didn't know much about that word. I did know that I wanted Ivy to be a commercial entity, but I was kind of wanted it to get to a certain stage and open source usage and like providing value before I would even think about that. But an influx of VCs started messaging me and arranging calls. I then took some of those calls, and then some of them wanted to invest, and it went from there. I'm actually in a very fortunate position where I've still not reached out to a single investor yet.
Wow.
It's all been inbound, and so I guess like we were building something in the AI space at a time when obviously AI was taking off, and that's how that went really. And we've just raised kind of incrementally really. Yeah.
Amazing. But how did you get the message out there that you were building it? How did they find you?
So the first like public. The first like trace of Ivy publicly was a tweet I did in early 2021, which was when it was like very early. It was kind of done as a hobbyist project, and then I continued to build upon it for most of 2021, and then we got our first investment in early 2022. So for that kind of 12 months, there was like a year of building up to this release, then there was another year or so of like me building it independently, and then there was the investment. So that that tweet got a bit of attention. It got like, I don't know, kind of 140 likes or something, and 13,000 views or something. So that probably like put it out there in some sense that meant people could have a look. Yeah.
Amazing. So you did it organically, basically.
Well, yeah. So far it's been that way. Yeah.
Amazing. And is there a particular moment or milestone that you consider the turning point for Unify's growth and success? What made it so significant as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a boring answer, but to be honest, the first ticket helped. So we the first ticket was just, I mean, I say just, I mean, it was hugely impactful for the project, but it was 200,000, and that enabled me to hire a few interns. We could then start to reach out to more universities. We reached out to a lot of universities, advertising the internships, put it out on a lot of job boards. That created a big influx of attention. Then the interns obviously could start to help to review the pull requests from other people and so on. So it just kind of, it kind of overcame this activation energy, which is like one person's bottleneck, which it had been, and actually started to get the capacity to flourish. And then as it started to do well, other VCs got interested, and we managed to raise more and so on. And it's kind of had this like, partial snowball effect since then, I think. So I guess that's how I would, that's the biggest moment really, when we actually got some funding to get the word out there and get some other hands on deck to help me out.
Great. And you mentioned that you hire interns, right?
Yes.
So, and you also interned at Amazon.
I did.
Is that right?
Yes.
Have you taken a lot of principles and practices from such a massive business, and put it into practice at Unify?
Yeah, I guess you're always absorbing things, obviously. I'm not sure I could put my finger to one specific thing. I think what we do is quite different, predominantly because it's fully remote. So we have people all over the world, and therefore, in a way, in Amazon, like there was a meeting at 9 a.m. every morning where we did a stand-up. We do the stand-up stuff at the beginning, so there was certainly some principles there, but we have to be we have to think outside the box a bit more, because we even early on we had people across different countries all trying to synchronize, so we have to take a slightly more asynchronous communication style approach. We do all our communication through Discord. We do have recurring meetings, but no, for sure. I definitely took inspiration from the style and the tone of the meetings that we had, both at Amazon and also in my PhD lab as well. For sure, of course, you always leverage your past experience and everything. But I wouldn't overemphasize that too much, because I think doing things fully remotely needs a lot of unique processes that we've had to kind of really discover along the way, more than kind of taking it from elsewhere or something. Yeah.
So what are those unique processes then?
Well, so there's a lot of things. I think first of all, having like a culture where obviously it's expected that the communication style is asynchronous. Like if you have to try and guess or work out what the time zone is of the person you're messaging and decide if it's appropriate to message them because outside of hours, like that wouldn't work. So you message somebody when you have a question, when you want them to do something, and it's expected that they pick it up when they're next working. And we have flexible hours as well to enable people to work around universities and things like this. I think lots of face-to-face time is important, because obviously you're not having real face-to-face time. So at the beginning, our processes have needed to scale as the company's grown as well, of course, because at the beginning it was 4 interns, now we have 30 engineers, and the kind of processes required in both cases differ a little bit. But I think, yeah, regular face-to-face meeting. I think another thing that's important is having everybody feel ownership, and also having something of a democratic approach to get to, so that people are bought into what you're doing. So twice a week we have a discussion sync where all of the biggest strategic questions of the company, as well as the biggest questions about how we do things internally and how people are finding things, we have a discussion sync where we go into maybe 10 breakout rooms, and then everybody comes back with their findings. We all synthesize it together and then make action points and make a change quickly. So there's a lot of things. I could list like all of the 15 types of meetings, but I guess asynchronous communication, making people feel involved, listening to people genuinely, and getting everybody being a part of steering the ship on the right course. And yeah, I think these are some of the main points. And lots of FaceTime, lots of recurring randomized FaceTime. There's not just a big meeting with 30 people with their cameras off that just sit, aren't engaged, but meetings that actually recreate the impromptu coffee room chats you might get, which is what these discussion things do, because you're then randomly in a room with 2 or 3 people. You then, over a certain amount of time, through randomness, you end up having some personal connection to every single person on the team, and I think that's really important. The other thing, sorry, this is a very long monologue. I have a tendency with divergent thinking. The other thing is we have work, so we do have a virtual office now as well, where people go in. That's purely play. All of the technical conversations happen in Discord, so there's a permanent archive of them in the private channels, so new people can onboard themselves quickly by subscribing to channels and so on. But when it comes to just goofing around and playing a bit of online football or something, or FIFA or something or whatever, or just having a general chat, we have this kind of virtual office where people go and make a lot of use of. So that's nice, and everyone customizes their office room, and just a bit of a ridiculous space.
What was that called?
It's called SoWork.
SoWork.
Yeah. One of these things, I guess, that exploded during COVID, and maybe not as many people use it anymore. But for us, it's really, really useful. It's nothing special. It's like some 3D avatars. You customize your clothes you wear. You customize your office. There's all these pool tables and stuff, and it's just a bit of levity that people go into. And when you walk up to somebody, it automatically starts a video call with them. So the conversations are not as rigid. It's not like you need to, let's hop on a video call and schedule it for 10 minutes. It's like, no, I'm just going to walk up to someone in this office and start a chat. So I think that really helps as well.
Brilliant. So we had a lot of co-founders come on the show, but no soul founders.
There's not many of us out there.
There isn't. What do you feel the advantages, but also the disadvantages of being a founder and not a co-founder?
Yeah. Well, I can't speak to the disadvantages too much, because I guess you don't know what you don't know. But neither the advantages, to be honest. As somebody that only has one set of experience, I guess I won't know for sure. But what I can say quickly is that, because another question that's quite often asked is, why don't you have a co-founder or something? And my answer to that question is that at any point for me to bring on a co-founder, it would have been quite a contrived thing. I mean, obviously, bear in mind before any angel ticket came in, it was like 2 years of like, solid work getting it to where it was, and then the investment came in, and at that point I was just keen to get interns working on it, and then after that, let's say there's like 5 people who are now becoming experts in the code, doing amazing work. For me to kind of bring in somebody above them who has open source experience, it never felt like it was really needed, and it just never felt like an urgent issue to get a co-founder, otherwise the company won't succeed. I've never felt weighed down by the responsibility or anything, and I think the reason that it works as well is because I am very deliberate in preventing myself from ever being a single point of failure. So I consistently reach out to our whole network of investors and angels, and ask for their perspective, and I value their perspective. I don't do it for any other reason. Same with the team. When we do these discussion things, and everyone on the team, we say, this is a big question, I'm not sure, this is what I think, but it could be like this, could be like this, I don't know, what do you guys think? And everyone goes into breakout rooms, everybody comes back with really rich opinions that contrast and synthesize to form a more holistic picture of the situation, and I take that into account deeply, and I think the company has made a lot of its decisions on the basis of the whole team having a seat at the table and weighing in on it. So I think with these kind of approaches, you're not as isolated as a founder as it might appear. And I guess the benefit obviously is then when things need to be decisive, they can be. When decisions need to be made quickly, of course I make them very, very quickly. I don't always kind of do a totally unanimous kind of poll or something on every decision. Whereas with co-founders, obviously co-founder fighting and frictions can actually lead to a lot of stagnation on decisions and frictions and so on. So
yeah, it's fair. Certainly fair to say that you're not running a dictatorship then.
Yeah, well, yes, it's fair to say that. I think and I hope, and the employees would say that as well. So.
Yeah. Great. Are you doing any coaching or anything like that externally to constantly be on top of your game?
Do you mean me being coached?
Management coaching, anything like that?
No, maybe I should, but no, I'm not doing anything like this. Yeah, but what I do instead is consistently ask the whole team to do anonymous surveys of my management style. Thankfully, the responses are consistently positive, which is very flattering, and good to know that I'm getting a lot of stuff right. But obviously sometimes there's things where people say, well, this could be better and this could be better. So and when they say that, I immediately change tune a bit. So I'm listening to the entire team with recurring anonymous feedback and adjusting accordingly. So I guess that's the best coaching you can get, really, I suppose.
Is it quite nerve-wracking to put yourself out there like that with an anonymous survey?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we try to build up a strong culture of feedback is always good. Like, even across the whole team, we say if somebody does something that you maybe think could be done better, feedback is in all of our interests for kind of mutual growth. So there's nothing, kind of bitchy or anything like this. And actually, you should just say straight to them, hey, as soon as it happens, we use the coin model, so context observation, impact, and next steps, I think is what it is. So basically just kind of really concrete, nothing kind of too characterizing of a person, but more just this situation, I think this could have been better, this is what I recommend might be done. And we really encourage everybody to give that feedback across all levels. Like an intern can give that to me, and they do, and in all directions. And I think by detaching that feedback from any kind of power like dynamic or any kind of malice or something, I think we can all be quite open to receiving feedback without needing to be nervous. So
great. And have you encountered any unexpected competition or challenges from established players in the industry, and how do you differentiate your startup and maintain a competitive edge? Sure.
So kind of, I mean, I actually in a way I still don't think anyone is really our competitors, to be honest, because there's no one out, I mean, without getting into too much technical detail, but there's no one else out there that quite in the same way connects to everything out there en masse. We're not trying to build the best framework, really, or we're not trying to build the best compiler infrastructure or build the best hardware. We're not building compiler infrastructure or hardware, or really even a framework. We're kind of building the glue that connects them all together. Nothing else is doing that. So even when something new comes out, and there's many great things like OctoML, built on top of Apache TVM, is very strong for deployment. There's things like Neural Magic, which are very strong for deploying, particularly on low memory devices and kind of compressing networks using sparsification and so on. TitanML is another one. I don't know what the technical background of the listeners is, but modular is another one from Chris Latner, who's kind of one of the biggest experts in compiler infrastructure in the world, well, probably the biggest, building LLVM and MLIR. They're building a new superset of Python called Mojo, which is going to be tremendously valuable, as well as their own inference engine and everything. But I don't see any of these as competitors, because what we're doing is not trying to build something new that's better than lots of the things. We're trying to make all of these things interoperable with the right, carefully thought through abstraction layer that effectively elevates everybody and gives the user genuine choice without any ulterior motive. We bring them the best in class tools for their needs, and that's all we care about. And we, and this is kind of, I guess, how we see ourselves positioned. So yeah, short answer, there's a lot of relevant, amazing stuff happening. I think all of it is very synergistic with what we're doing, basically.
And were there any interesting or unconventional strategies you employed to obtain users in the early stages of your startup?
Yeah, not users as such, but I suppose applicants. I mean, I don't know if it's strange or unconventional. It's probably the most conventional thing you can do, actually. But what we did do is, at the very beginning, after getting the first ticket, is basically reach out to every computer science department. I mean, not every, but we reached out to a lot of computer science departments, like, hundreds, all over the world, because we have purely merit-based hiring, so we don't place any particular focus on certain areas of the world or anything like this. So we reached out to a ton of computer science departments. We put our job out on lots of job boards and so on, and that really created this big influx of applicants right at the beginning. And then they told their friends, they started to contribute to the project and so on, and that really was kind of the beginning of this hockey stick that we've then seen in the stars on the project and the Discord engagement and so on. So I think that really helped. And that's now resulted in us having 25,000 applications in total. So we've had a ton of people apply, a ton of people tell their friends, and I think a lot of excitement stemming from that. So yeah.
Brilliant. So in what ways does Unify contribute to the broader machine learning community? Are there any plans to open source the technology or collaborate with other projects?
So the project is predominantly open source. Actually, kind of 95% of it or so is open source. And this is really necessary for the success of Ivy, because basically the project is such a large-scale engineering challenge. There are literally thousands, if not tens of thousands, of independent tasks, all of which need doing and can be done in total isolation of one another. So there's no treading on each other's toes when you do all of these tasks. And this is the perfect project for open sourcing, because then you can get a whole global engagement, and everybody can be working on this, asynchronously, basically. And that's why we now have 1,000 contributors, because it's a project that lends itself to that very, very well, whereas others, are much more serial in nature. So the open source part is really important, and to be honest, the project would not have any chances of succeeding if it wasn't open source, basically.
Great. And what are your plans for expanding Unify's compatibility to other machine learning frameworks in the future?
Yeah, so at the moment we support NumPy, PyTorch, NumPy, PyTorch, TensorFlow, JAX, and Paddle, and also almost got MindSport integrated as well. We're now looking to integrate, as well as these, I think next on our roadmap is probably scikit-learn, maybe Pandas, although we need to work out how to integrate a data frame into Ivy to support that. Just to explain, with these frameworks, these are not most of the frameworks we support now operate on the level of arrays. So it's mapmul, it's element-wise addition, it's kind of cosine or something, just kind of operating on collections of numbers and quite atomic in that sense. There are other frameworks which are much higher level, like scikit-learn has a lot of high-level algorithms for tree-based searching or something that then do a lot of work under the hood, and it's a single function that you call. The way that these get integrated into Ivy is that we add a front end, which basically means that we enable these functions from these high-level libraries to be composed into Ivy code, which then enables them to be accelerated via our backends and so on. But we can't take Ivy code and turn it into scikit-learn. We can take Ivy code and turn it into NumPy or TensorFlow or PyTorch, all of these array-based libraries, but we can't take this kind of low-level Ivy code and turn it into high-level code. So that's just one difference that's worth emphasizing. But yeah, next on our roadmap is scikit-learn, Pandas, and further than that, we're looking to even branch outside of Python and support Julia and MATLAB and maybe some of the ML stuff in Haskell and stuff. But let's see, one step at a time. But yeah, we have big sights.
Great. what are some of the most valuable lessons you've learned as a founder, both personally and professionally?
I think one thing. I mean, there's things that I've learned throughout my whole management kind of career, not career. What do I mean? There's things I've learned just through projects and stuff at university, of course, that were probably even bigger, like instrumental moments. But I think because I like just have a tendency to supervise the projects. And when we did our group projects and stuff, I generally ended up as project manager, and I certainly learned a ton there as well. But in the company, probably the first one is which I had a bit of a sense of, but I've only got a stronger appreciation for this now, is basically that I think you should delegate as soon as possible whenever you start to do something that is even vaguely repetitive, and you can create a documentation that explains it. And you should, as soon as you get a sense that you're doing something that you could get some support with and you can delegate it, then you should. And that's how I think and why we've scaled the team so quickly, because there was a lot of stuff that I was doing at Ivy that was quite not repetitive, I don't know. It's more that like there was a lot of stuff that could be taught, and I could create an extensive YouTube video for this, and other good engineers could just pick it up very quickly. And therefore, the first 3 months of the company, pretty much I only spent making comprehensive YouTube series just so that other people could pick those tasks up. But I think even more now, there's other things that you need to let go of. There's whole areas of the framework now that I don't understand anywhere near as well as our head of framework understands it. There's areas in user experience where now I've let go of control of the docs, and Guillermo, for example, in this case, is gonna lead on all of that. I'll trust his decision, and I don't need to be in the loop at all. And I think you need to, if you want to move quickly, you need to be humble enough and trusting enough of your team to let go of a lot of things, and not try and have your finger in every pot, because if you do, then you're going to become a massive bottleneck to progress. And I think that's something that I have a new appreciation of, on a daily basis, basically.
Brilliant. And you mentioned that you ended up being project manager a lot of the time on your projects back at university, right?
Yeah.
Does it come natural to you to be PM, or were people picking you, or was it something that you wanted to do?
No, I guess I'd have to think back. I hope it's not that I came in there and said, right,
Yeah.
guys, listen to me.
Yeah, pick me.
I don't know. I guess it just come natural in a way, but I guess it was a bit of both. I think people, like we said, who's interested in being project manager, and it was probably a few of us, and then we maybe did a vote or something, and it for one reason or another usually ended up being me. I can't say exactly, but it's something that certainly I love doing. So I will always I think I would have always put myself in the race, and hope that I can be chosen that role. And I say all of the projects. I mean, there's probably 3 of them.
Yeah.
There's a million of them, but so it comes naturally to me. I really love doing it, and I've always loved doing it. I've always had a tendency to really like to coordinate things, and I think I have a lot of energy as well. I think maybe some people just wouldn't want to take on that responsibility or something, and because it is probably, you end up doing more work probably when you take on that role on a group project. But yeah, I don't know. It's something I really love doing. So
Great. Where do you see Unify in the next 5 years?
Oh, I don't know. Hopefully still a company. But I'm pretty confident it will be, obviously. Where do I see Unify in 5 years? So, I mean, I would hope, and obviously every founder has lofty ambitions, so you've got to take it with a pinch of salt, but this is where I think things can go if we get everything right. Ivy would be, or Unify as a company more broadly, would be the front-facing interface for ML deployment. So the world we see is one where, as a user using any version of any framework, you can come in with one line of code, ivy.deploy. We will automatically find the best combination of framework version, compiler infrastructure, hardware vendor, cloud. We can kind of make all of that really easy for you. We can sit on top of Terraform, so we can operate across different clouds and so on. And then you can trust us that we will basically continually schedule your jobs in the optimal way. As soon as a new compiler technology comes out, you don't need to stop your job and restart it. We'll just loop that in automatically and start saving you costs instantly. And this is, I think, would provide a lot of value. And if we can solve that well and we can create that tool, then I see Ivy being a big company that's solving real problems for ML. And obviously, in terms of how big, let's see. But I hope that we're providing real value, and we're a household name in the AI space, and really helping a lot of people to save time and money on the ML. That would be the dream. Yeah.
Great. I've just remembered as well, we didn't answer the valuable lessons question on the personal side as well.
Okay, yeah.
So you remember before the podcast we were talking about fitness, we were talking about diet and all that kind of stuff. Being a founder, what do you do on the personal side? Is there any lessons that you've learned to run a business on the personal side that have made you more efficient?
Well, I think again, it's a cliche, but it's true. You need to take like downtime seriously. I know that there's a sense of glorifying those that work 100 hours a week and that's it. I don't believe it's possible to do 100 concentrated, energized, good hours of work a week. Like, I just don't think it is. I think you'll end up procrastinating. You'll be there at the desk for 3 hours, but you'll have done an hour of work if you push yourself too hard. So I do take Sundays off. I do occasionally reply to some emails, but Sunday is an off day, more or less. And I think that has given me like long-term energy to really crunch down at the week and get lots of stuff done. And I think you need that because I also think it's important for your company or your work in general to not be the only thing of value in your life. I think as soon as you tie your entire sense of self-worth to your company, like, you're destined to fail, because that's way too much pressure for the company to succeed. Like, you got to want it to succeed and have positive enthusiasm to do everything you can, but as soon as like company failure is the loss of your identity, that's not a good place. So I think you need to have a life outside of work to some extent. Obviously you need to work long, and I do work Saturdays. I don't have the most balanced life, but that's okay. It's a life I choose and a life I enjoy. So that's one thing. And also just health in general. Actually, one thing with me in particular, so I for example, I used to do cycling every day and running every day. I put on a ton of weight during the first year and a half of the company. So I like put on 15 kilos. And that's something that the only point here is that it was actually then making me feel a bit more tired. Obviously, I started more broadly. I just started to feel a bit less healthy. I was being a bit less active. I was eating less healthy and so on. And I think now I've tried to correct course a bit there. I think these things in the short term might feel like the best thing because, of course, nothing like, goes above your hierarchy of needs above the company. You have this kind of hierarchy of needs, and as a founder, your company is kind of always there at number one. And I'll eat healthier tomorrow. Right now, I just need some food because I got so much work to do. But I think like long term, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself physically and mentally and having downtime and stuff. I think it's a cliche, but it's really really important, particularly if you're in it for the long haul. So
yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. Have you noticed the difference in terms of your alertness after you've changed things up?
Yeah, well, I think it might. I have done, but I think it's maybe too early to say because I only started really in terms of eating a bit more healthy and everything 3 weeks ago. I was saying earlier, so I'm actually now fasting every day. Also partly inspired because I went on some amazing retreats. I went to Dubai to meet all of our team from Pakistan a few weeks ago. I went to Dehradun in the north of India to meet our team in India. Then I went to Cairo to meet all of our Egypt team. And just hearing them talking about Ramadan as well, just reinforced in my mind that, of course, the human body has evolved to deal with like food for not a few days and everything. And it made me think that basically I am really bad at like having self-discipline when it comes to like hazy rules. So basically I was kind of when I was just saying, eat a bit more sensibly, like I was like, what does that mean? I'm just going to keep getting takeaways 4 times a day. So now I've just decided, it's a bit of a draconian measure, but for me it's working, to just have 1 meal a day at 8 p.m. So I'm basically fasting throughout the whole day. The first week it's incredibly hard. I felt really dizzy and sick and like genuinely sick. And so it's not like it's the most healthy thing to do. I think like, in fact, grazing is actually, at least as research says, a little bit healthier. But for me at least, just kind of teaching my body that no, you don't need to eat every 2 hours. Like my body, I felt like my body needed to understand that. So this is kind of the process I'm going through. But yeah, I feel much better though, I have to say. So
brilliant.
But obviously my advice, just to clarify, is not that everyone should fast. My advice is that people should just do whatever for them makes them feel more relaxed and healthy, and having downtime, and these are the things that really really matter.
Brilliant. So following on from this, and to end on, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs who want to start their own business?
God, one piece. I'd have to give them. There's a lot I'd try to give, but if it was one, I mean, there's obviously the cliche. Okay, so the first one is obviously you need to be passionate about what you're doing. Yeah. Like, I don't know that many entrepreneurs that succeed because of their sheer desire to be a CEO alone. I think, for me at least, I didn't even know what VC was. I didn't enter into this space because of any desire to be a founder or something. It was because I really wanted to solve this problem. I was doing it on my own for 2 years, and then VC started to reach out. Obviously, that's quite a unique situation, but I think you need to be really passionate about the problem. At least I think that's what has the highest chance of success, because you're going to be doing this problem every day. The glossiness of being a founder is going to wear off pretty quick, and you've got to really love what you're doing, I think. That's one. And then just quickly, I know you said one, but the other one I would just to quickly say would be, I think you really need to, I personally think, I mean, obviously from personal experience, the best organizations flourish when people feel respected and seen, and I think you should not be try to be too top down and see yourself as this other thing compared to your employees and your interns. You're all just engineers. I mean, in my case at least, we're all just engineers, or you're all just people, all with a seat at the table. And I think making people feel heard, and and letting everybody have a voice and everything, I think is important for people to feel invested in the company as well. So that's another one I think I would emphasize for people to do as much as they can. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today and chatting about Unify. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
And obviously, we wish you all the best in the future.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much. Really, really great to be here. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.